Hello and welcome to this video of the Simplified opening series. In this video, I will give you a sort of a repertoire when you can start playing the Slav defense in a conceptual way. And what I mean by conceptual way? Well, this video won't be theoretically heavy, but it will give you the main guidelines how to play the opening and base your moves on concepts or principles. And the main principle of the concept of the Slav defense is to solve the problem of the development of the light squared bishop. So the whole repertoire and the lines I'm going to propose are based on that. Getting the bishop out to f5 and then play the move e6 and obtain a very solid position without weaknesses. This type of playing the Slav I developed to obviously much greater detail in my chessable course on the Chebanenko Slav, which follows the same principle, getting the bishop developed and then playing e6. While in this video, I will propose an alternative by concentrating on the so-called classical main line of the Slav. So, without further ado, what do I have in mind? So let's go d4, d5, c4, c6. The Slav defense has always been one of the most popular openings against d4 ever since it was played. First time it featured heavily in the Alekhine Ewe matches, and ever since then it has been played by practically all world champions. So against the Slav, White has, let's say, 1, 2, 3 main setups plus the exchange variation. I will leave the exchange variation for as last because that is actually the only one where I will not go for the bishop f5 development for reasons that these lines are very theoretical and require quite some knowledge. But there I will recommend something else, still with the idea of solving the problem of the light squared bishop. Before continuing, let me remind you, this is not a foolproof, soundproof, whatever kind of proof repertoire that you can use immediately. This is just an outline, a guideline, which lines to use if you want to play the Slav in a conceptual way. Now, the lines that White has at his disposal are the following. Developing the knights first, knight c3, knight f3, that's one line. The second line is knight c3 and e3. And the third line is knight f3 and e3. There is one minor line, knight f3 and queen c2 or queen b3, which I will also briefly mention. And obviously, I said the exchange Slav. So let's start with the move knight f3, knight f6, and here e3. If White goes queen c2 or queen b3, Black will react in the same way as in the main line, which is to take on c4 and then develop the bishop on f5, then go e6, knight bd7, bishop e7, and short castle. Basically, this is all you need to know. Yeah, the same applies to queen b3, obviously. Queen b3, dc4, queen c4, bishop f5. So let's check the move e3. The idea of the move is to be able to develop the knight to d2, or wait a little bit with the development from the knight on b1. Maybe go bishop d3 first, short castle, and then be more flexible with the development. As I said, Black plays this in a conceptual way, and that is to develop the bishop to f5, play e6, and establish a good position. With the same idea, you can also go bishop g4, and then chop off the knight on f3, go e6, and have the same. But let's just stick to development of the bishop to f5. Knight c3, e6, and Black established his desired development. In my course, I call this triangle of pawns on e6, d5, and c6, the triangle, and I developed this kind of rule of thumb that once the triangle has been set up in place, Black is safe. No, let's say, accidents can happen in the center thanks to some queen b3 move, attacking b7 or attacking d5 because d5 is well defended, and queen b3 can always be met either by queen b6, queen c7, or queen c8. So all these moves are possible one way or another. White's only way here to fight for some sort of an advantage is to harass the bishop by going knight h4 and to gain the bishop pair. Now there are moves like bishop g4, bishop e4, but the simplest by far is bishop g6. And here there are a lot of plans, a lot of setups for white. There is only one for black, which makes it much easier. And what I would like to explain is that this bishop at some point will be exchanged. Knight takes g6, h takes g6, bishop d2, and now, or any other move by white, and then black goes knight bd7, the bishop goes to d6, and black is basically almost fully developed. The queen will go to e7 or c7. Castling can be made, but the king can also wait for a while in the center. And black's plan after that is depending on what white does, but there are again very few options. Let's just make some moves to show you. Let's say h3, bishop d6, anticipating this attack with bishop d6 on the pawn on h2. Let's say bishop d3. Yeah, and like I said, one of black's plans is to take on c4 at some point, especially when white is forced to lose the tempo with the bishop. Bishop takes c4. Let's say castles, and now aim for either for e5 or for c5. This again will depend on the concrete situation on the board, but this is what black is striving for: e5 or c5, when the free development and the good central control that he's getting compensates for the pair of bishops. So this is what black is aiming for. And as a again general rule of thumb is that after cd5, black will recapture symmetrically with cd5, unless there are some concrete problems. Yeah, sometimes obviously d5 needs to be played, but this depends again on the concrete situation. Just to illustrate one of those, let's say queen b3, attacking the pawn on b7, queen c7. Other moves, queen b6, rook b8 are also possible, but let's say the queen is on c7, now cd5. Now cd5 would be bad because there is knight b5, rook c1, yeah, problems with immediate problems on the queen side. So here, let's say ed5 must be played. Yeah. So this is the type of problems you should be kind of aware of, and then you decide how to recapture on d5, but generally you recapture symmetrically. So this is the knight f3, e3 plan. Now let's move on to the move knight c3, knight f6, and we mentioned two more moves here, knight f3 and e3. cd5 would lead us to the exchange variation. So let's check the move e3. And here, well, the major breakthrough, in fact, in this line of the Slav was when it was established that the move bishop f5 is perfectly fine. It was considered that it's not, so that's why even the Chebanenko line was invented with a6 to prepare bishop f5. Yeah, but not so long ago, historically speaking, it was kind of black players realized that the move bishop e5 is in fact possible. So what's the problem, or what was considered to be problem with the move bishop e5 is that after cd5, queen b3 is unpleasant, attacking the pawn on b7, yeah, and not allowing black to go queen c8 or queen c7 because the pawn on d5 is hanging. And that's why, for example, why the Chebanenko move a6 has been invented, so black can go rook a7 and defend that pawn on b7. But the revolutionary understanding here was that black can actually go knight c6 and sacrifice that pawn on b7. Queen takes b7, bishop drops back to d7, threatening rook b8, knight b4, attacking the queen on a6 and knight c2, so the queen drops back to b3, rook b8, gaining tempo for development, queen d1 and e5. So black got quite a few tempi for development and got a development advantage. In addition to that, goes e5 and opens up the game in the center. From a practical perspective, it's also convenient for black that almost inevitably one type of position will happen, and that is when white exchanges on e5. So either immediately or playing knight f3, bishop d6, and now d takes e5, knight d5. And this is the position we are getting. Yeah. Normally, bishop e2 is played because knight d4 is an alternative, but castles, bishop e2, and now many moves like knight c4, knight e4, yeah, here, knight e4, or simply queen c7, setting up a battery. Yeah, these are all possible moves for black. And generally, let's go back here. Black has an IQP on d5, pawn down, but the development advantage and the fact that white cannot easily finish development give him full compensation. So let's say bishop e2 castles. Yeah, this is the starting position where white normally castles, because the pawn on d5 is taboo. Knight d5, knight f3, bishop f3, knight d5, and white is in trouble. Let's say queen d5, bishop e6, queen d1, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, take on d2, queen d2, queen d2, king d2, rook b2, check, and black will regain the pawn with an advantage. Whether he will get a passed pawn by capturing on a2 or taking on f2, when white will have bad structure and an exposed king, this gives black an advantage. Similar is if, let's say, white takes on d5 with the bishop and queen a5 check. The problem is that the bishop is targeted, so bishop d2 is not possible as the bishop is hanging, so king f1 and bishop e5. And again, bad king, pressure on the queen side, bad development by white, big problems. So the pawn cannot be taken, so normally castle, short castle is played, and here there are many moves again for black. One interesting idea is rook b6, yeah, with some ideas to swing the rook, but also to play the move queen a8. So let's say g3, queen a8 was played in the game Svidler won Forest. Some user commented on my pronunciation of one Forest. Sorry about this. Yeah, it should have rhymed with waste, but I don't know how to pronounce that. Forest. Sorry about that. Anyway, so that's one interesting idea. Jordan is a very nice guy. I know him personally, so I mean, hope he won't be offended by the mispronunciation of the surname. Happens to me all the time. People mispronounce my surname all the time. For the record, it's Colovic, not Colovic, not Colovic, Colovic. Okay, so there is another idea like knight f3, bishop f3, queen c7, attacking h2, g3, rook fd8, and again with very rich play. Bishop come to e5. It's difficult for the knight is targeted. It's difficult to go b3. Knight is hanging, bishop d2, b2 is hanging, so white is lagging back in development. And taking on d5 is possible, but black wins an exchange after knight d5, bishop d5, bishop b5, rook e1, bishop b4. Yeah, now bishop d2 is not possible because the bishop is hanging, so e4, take on e1, queen d7. White has 2 pawns for the exchange, but objectively the position is equal. This was played in the game Jones Dvirny. Daniel Dvirny, good friend of mine. And the third move is, let's say, queen c7. Yeah, rook e8, perfectly fine moves as well. So obviously you should explore these positions more deeply. I'm just giving you an outline, but it's clear that this discovery that this pawn sacrifice is so good solves the problem of the knight c3 e3 move order. So let's move on to what's considered the main way to tackle the Slav, knight c3, knight f3. And here, obviously, many options, e6, the semi-Slav, a6, the Chevanenko, but the idea to go bishop f5 here directly is not possible, is not good, because knight f3 is more useful than e3, and here cd, queen b3 is in fact problematic. So there is no e5 break, and well, white is much better here. So to enable that, black first takes on c4. Now the threat is to go b5, remain a pawn up. White sometimes plays the gambit e4, b5. It's sharp, but black is fine, obviously. There is also the move e3, trying to make do without the a4 move, but after b5, a4, b4, knight a2, there is a double attack on the pawns on b4 and c4. But black manages to solve the problem of the bishop in the following manner: e6, let's say, bishop c4, bishop b7, and after knight b7, c5 will happen at some point, and the bishop will have very good work on the long diagonal. Obviously, bishop e7 will be played, short castle, a5 is possible also on the queen side, so this is fine for black. a4 is the main move, stopping b5, but now bishop f5. And we are at the starting position of the classical line of the Slav defense. In this position, white has two main moves, both center around regaining the pawn on c4. One is e3 and the other one is knight e5. Yeah. After knight e5, black has two ways how to play this line. One is sharper, more concrete, more theoretical, and the other one is more, let's say, conceptual. I will also show you the more concrete line because I think it's kind of an exciting one. But I would normally recommend the more conceptual one. So the sharper one starts with the move e6. Black is getting ready to go c5. So f3 is the move that white plays, going for e4. Yeah. And again, if you feel like kind of staying solid and going along the lines of such great champions as Vladimir Kramnik and Vishwanathan Anand, you can go c5, e4, bishop g6, bishop e3, take on d4, queen d4, queen d4, bishop d4, knight fd7, knight d7, knight d7, bishop c4. The famous endgame was tested in two world championship matches, Kramnik Topalov and Anand Topalov, and generally black is able to hold the draw here, even though Anand lost one game. He shouldn't have, but with some suffering, black should be able to equalize here and draw. So this is again a slower way of playing. The sharper way of playing is going bishop b4, e4, and now sacrifice a piece, bishop e4. And this is forced, f e4, knight e4, attack on the knight on c3. So bishop d2, queen d4, knight e4, queen e4 check, queen e2, bishop d2, king d2. And now there are checks on d5, d4, let's say d5. Kings. Now white can go to c3, to c2, to c1. But black generally goes short castle, goes something like b5. And with, at the time, 4 pawns, but can be 3 pawns for the piece, should be doing all right. This is a heavily explored line. You can take a look at it if you feel like. I think black is somewhat probably a bit easier to play here, depending on white's theoretical knowledge. Honestly, if white doesn't really know what he's doing, this is excellent for black. If white knows what he's doing, then black should also know what he's doing. So this is the sharp line, yeah, bishop b4, but with the subline of c5. But the conceptual way I would like to recommend here is knight bd7, challenging the knight on e5. So knight goes, takes on c4, and now knight b6 again, challenging the knight on c4. There is again a more dynamic way to play, and that starts with the move queen c7, controlling d4, e5 square, and intending e5. So g3, e5, take on e5, knight e5, bishop f4, knight fd7, bishop g2. And here there is Morozevic's move g5. There is the move f6, which Ewe played, for example, in his match against Alyekhin. Again, more dynamic way. Black often castles queenside here. Sharper game ahead. But again, like I said, this requires some preparation. The conceptual way is knight b6, knight e5, going back, and now a5. Key idea for black in these lines, fixing the pawn at the b4 square. And now there are a couple of, there's one trick that you should be aware of if white continues with the move e3. It's not as innocuous as it may seem, because it just prepares moves like g4, h4, targeting the bishop on f5. So e6 is just basically losing, g4, bishop g6, h4, and h5 is threatened. And if h6, knight g6, fg6 leaves black with a horrible pawn structure. Knight fd7 doesn't work because of knight f7, king f7, queen f3, which gives white the initiative and gives black a bad king. But by continuing to harass the knight bd7, yeah, black is fine. Knight c4 now, and e6. Now it's safe. g4 is no longer a threat, and black continues. Bishop b4, short castle, and black is fine. f3 is another move. Here knight fd7 works because there is no knight f7. Take on d7, knight d7, e4, bishop g6, bishop e3, and now both e6 or e5 work. And again, we are getting the typical Slav development. Yeah, bishop out, good development, strong outpost on b4. So this is the move knight e5. Yeah, the knight e5. e3 is the alternative. e6, this puts less pressure on black. Bishop c4, bishop b4, using the good square on b4, castles, castles, yeah. And now there are many ways for white to play, but black generally plays in the more or less the same way. Knight comes to d7 and then tries to go e5, c5, or just maintains the position as it is with preparatory moves like queen a5, rook c8, rook e8, many moves to improve the position, maybe even a5, yeah, to fix that b4 outpost, and still reacting to white's plans, but the main breaks would be e5 or c5. So the main move here for white has been queen e2, preparing e4, yeah, and now knight bd7, e4, bishop g6, bishop d3 has established itself as a main line, again line heavily tested in the World Championship match Topalov-Kramnik. Topalov and also later Anand always prefer the move bishop h5, pinning the knight on f3, even though other moves like rook e8 or a5 are perfectly possible. And the type of position black is aiming for here is after e5, knight d5, knight d5. If white doesn't exchange, black quickly goes c5 and equalizes. Knight d5, cd5, queen e3, unpinning. Yeah. And now many moves were tried. Bishop e7 is one, rook e8 is another, but the type of position black is going for is after bishop g6, exchanging the bishops, bishop g6, f takes g6. So this is what black is aiming for. After h6 there is no attack, yeah, because black can play h6 and these pawns will be controlling a lot of squares. The rook can come to e8, let's say, the knight can come to f8 to cover e6 or h7 if necessary. So black is perfectly safe on the king side, and there is also semi-open f file for possibly some counterplay, whereas in the center we have this French Caro-Kann structure where black has the better bishop, yeah, not limited by the central pawns. So quite a playable, obviously, middle game, but black is doing all right. So this is the analysis of the main line Slav after knight f3, dc4. So this leaves us only with the exchange variation, which I leave for last because here I'm going to propose a different approach. So let's make the move cd5, cd5, knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4, knight f3, doesn't really matter. Bishop f4 is considered more precise because if the bishops are exchanged early, let's say after bishop d6, white can go e3 and f4 before going knight f3. And then there is more control in the center with pawns on f4 and d4 over the e5 outpost. And here the main moves are knight c6, a6, and so forth. But I'm proposing a kind of a really pedestrian way of playing this. Again, conceptual way. If you really want to study the theory, please study the theory. Many good ways to play for black here. In the Chevanenko chessable course, I recommended a6, knight c6, then bishop f5, and so on. Yeah, and again with this idea of bishop d6. But here I'm going to say just play e6, e3, and go bishop d6. Irrelevant of what white does, goes bishop g3 or takes on d6, take. Let's say bishop d3 castles. Now irrelevant knight f3 or f4. The idea is to go b6 and go bishop a6 and exchange the bishops. If queen e2, just a5 and then bishop comes to a6. And black will exchange bishops either for a bishop or for a knight, in case of, let's say, knight b5, for example. And with knights in a relatively close position, should be fine. Not the most direct way to play against the exchange Slav, but practical one, especially if you don't want to be bothered by learning a lot of theory. Because you know the concept, you know the idea, you know what you should be doing, and there you go, you play it. And this applies to the whole, this video, the whole, let's say, suggested lines, let's call them, in the Slav, where you basically know what you're aiming for, and the moves come from that understanding. All right, so that's it. Yeah, conceptual Slav. You can easily start playing the Slav after watching this video. I think it's really can be simple. Yeah, especially if you don't need to be theoretically booked up for your level of play. So thanks for watching, guys. As always, check out my Chessable courses. In this respect, the Chevanenko lifetime repertoire on Chessable can come in handy if you're interested in the subject. Also, subscribe to my Substack weekly newsletter every Saturday. If you really like my work here on YouTube, consider becoming a paid subscriber to my Substack to support my work both on Substack and YouTube. And in case you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button and keep on watching my videos. So thanks for watching again, and see you soon next week. Cheers.